Diamonds for Christmas, deciding what is important. For those of you who use our Explore It Discipleship material, you will notice that our notes for December are not called Christmas, but Advent. This season we are gifted each year, in which we wait, in which we prepare, in which we avoid being drawn into busyness and commercial mayhem, by reminding ourselves why we need God in our lives, why we need light in our darkness, and just why word became flesh. There is a Christmas storm that descends upon children, supercharged by parties and school plays. And in many homes, there are unrealistic expectations that push the finances of parents who simply want to do their best. Like an insect repeatedly flying into glass, do you ever find yourself repeating the same pattern of behaviour year on year, collapsing exhausted like discarded wrapping paper in a quiet corner, knowing that Advent didn't go too well again this year, did it? Well, in this challenging session of the Children's Leaders Network, we will look at art, literature, and some current affairs. And our giveaway text for this session is the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell's 2014 book entitled Walking Backwards to Christmas. Surprisingly, running backwards finds its way into fitness regimes of serious athletes. I'm not sure I would want to do this in the street, but running backwards activates different muscle groups and is actually good for you. But for us here in this session, walking backwards is, of course, approaching Christmas, but in a different way. We approach through the past. We remember where the story has been, and hopefully we will go deeper. It's perhaps a new move, a bit like Star Wars prequels and various spin-offs, which, unless you're a purist, came after the originals, but added layers to what we thought we knew about Luke Skywalker's relationship with Darth Vader. So why do we need more layers? No pun with Star Wars intended. Do children or their parents need this? Well, the Entertainer toy store is a fantastic signpost to the significance of the Nativity Story. But Playmobil is fine until we start asking questions, or until we sense the moment in childhood where children are trying to make meaning. Is there more to it? Today we decide which elements are important. Mary, Joseph, the innkeeper. Well, in godly play, I've heard children even say the donkey, because he was the Uber of the day. I wonder if walking backwards will help raise our expectations as well. Open our eyes that more people are involved and that Christmas might be a gift beyond diamonds. Stephen Cottrell tells the Christmas story backwards, introducing us to 11 characters and their private thoughts. Some who met Jesus before moving further and further back in time. You might want to write them down. Firstly, we meet Anna, prophetess in the temple, who says that the light has come into the world and the light has dimmed itself, or should I say clothed itself, in the grey ambiguity of life. We then meet Rachel, weeping for her tiny son, because mad men like Herod exist, slaughtering all such boys in a ferocious decree after being trapped by wiser men. We hear from one of them, Caspar, who asks, I wonder if true wisdom might be this, to know what matters and to rest secure in the peaceful affirmations of loving and being loved. Then David, a shepherd, a worker of filthy, stinking hands, suddenly included in the love of God on the night of Jesus' birth, saying, and we, simple men, uneducated, unread, ignorant of the law and all its suffocations, what hope of heaven for us? But now, with the heavens themselves opened to me, opened to ordinary men. We then meet Martha, a bit of a curveball, the so-named innkeeper's wife, Is she the most important character of the whole narrative? The anonymous, hospitable stranger. Joseph is agitated, yet represents the dreams of a dependable man. Knowing this, love begins to grow when falling in love is left behind. It takes time. It matures slowly in the fertile ground of commitment, of determined choosing this person and not another, this path and not that. Our remaining 4 characters are Elizabeth, whose longed-for child will prepare the way for Christ; Mary, faithful, strong-willed, with so many questions brought to life by Cottrell. What will Joseph say? How will I explain this to him? And what will the world say? And how will they ever know or believe that this child is from God? Isaiah is then a voice in a dark world, faithfully sharing without really knowing what he's telling about. It's just a great light to a people who walked in darkness. And then finally Moses, who fled into the wilderness only for a voice in a bush to catch his attention, learning that eventually light will come. As God said, I know their sufferings and I've come to deliver them. So those are the 11. You may think of others, but on that last one, a bush ablaze may illustrate you as a leader in this network, and you may feel burnt out before the Christmas storm even starts. But I love the fact that it emits heat and light without being consumed. There doesn't need to be a destruction. I would like to introduce the Diamond 9 activity to this session so that you can start to put in your most important characters on the template. You only have room for 9 from the Nativity Story, and feel free to write them in as I talk. You can add others I've not mentioned, sheep on hillsides or angelic chorus, but your most important character must go at the top. And then you allow 2 equal players in the next row, and so on. The Diamond 9 is a familiar tool for teachers, and we're hoping it aids our discussions in this network. Try to have good reasons for every choice you make in the diamond. Our book does not include Jesus himself, of course, so there's no need to put him at the top of the diamond, although if you're working with children during Advent, let's hope they do. Instead, I want to give you the luxury of 9 from the supporting cast. But first, I would like to stimulate your thinking, because I remember when somebody burst my Christmas bubble. No, it wasn't the moment I realised that I had downloaded an album by a singer called Michael Bublé. Yes, he does exist. Or the moment my mother crept into my bedroom to fill my stocking dressed up as Santa. No, he doesn't exist. It was finding that the classic nativity is a rather sterilised scene. Roger van der Weyden was a Dutch painter of the 1400s, part of the Renaissance movement, and he was anxious to show everybody his new skills of perspective. Just look at the roof of the brick-built stable. And also his skill of aerial perspective. Look at the way the sky and the buildings get lighter as they move further into the distance. There's a lot of people here gathering round. The 3 wise men bring gifts and the cattle are lowing. And Mary, by the way, is dressed in blue because that colour was symbolic of purity in art. But I don't feel it's atmospheric. But van der Weyden only intends to tell us his view of the story. Perhaps that rich men came to a run-down, weed-invaded ruin, and that Jesus unites all classes. Notice that he cannot resist the crucifixion on the middle pillar, telling his viewers where this historic birth meets death. But the painting is also a compressed narrative. It's squeezed into a moment in time. It's likely that the Magi arrived much later than this. The Greek uses a word meaning an unborn or newborn baby to denote the infancy of Jesus in the manger passage. Luke 2:16. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. In contrast, when the wise men arrived, Jesus was, again in the Greek wording, a young child, and the family was living in a house, not a stable. Matthew 2, verse 11. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. But we all know the school plays will reinforce the compressed narrative. Films will cement it in children's imaginations. And let me assure you, I recognize the wonder of this. The Nativity Story I knew as a child. Everybody in. Shepherds, kings, angels, innkeepers. It gave me a sense of God and a real joy at his coming to earth. But as leaders, can we dust off this gem? Is the Nativity Story a diamond when it shows us who we are, what our real world is like? Yet God chooses to come and stand in the muck of it all. Could we be bold enough to address the themes beneath the sanitized story? After all, the flip side to God with us and peace to all men is really about obsessions with power, the murder of children, questions as to the presence of God, pregnant teenagers, refugees fleeing for their lives, property owners sheltering the homeless, gossip, suspicion, dilemma, bad dreams. Yes, it sounds like an EastEnders omnibus edition. But does any of this change our Diamond 9? A manger scene by the British artist Banksy appeared in a hotel in Bethlehem in the West Bank in 2019. Dubbed the Scar of Bethlehem, the work shows Jesus' manger by Israel's separation barrier, which appears to have been pierced by a blast, creating the shape of the star. This is our real world, the world children hear of in the news. Should we let them talk about it or shield them from it? Spiritual development is about making meaning, and it's sometimes our role to nurture and guide the toughest of conversations. Listen to Rebecca Nye in her book Children's Spirituality, What It Is and Why It Matters, talking about when life goes wrong. I quote, "Children are hungry for a language to address their complex experiences and sense of life. To do justice to this, their spirituality needs more than a language of love. If we hide the darker religious language from them, children will seek it in other places." Unquote. I've deliberately challenged us in this session. Listen, I will be singing Christmas carols with the rest of them. I will be thanking God for Jesus' birth at the top of my voice. But thanks to Stephen Cottrell's book, we have a chance for reflection, reprioritizing, and considering our approach this Advent. I love the fact that he reminds us that there is not only light at the end of the tunnel, but eternal light at the beginning in the burning bush with Moses. And acknowledging our priority and work with children, how simple he makes this observation through the words of a shepherd named David. Whatever it was that God wanted to say to us that night, he was saying it in the silence of a child born. I hope we've outlined this evening that life perhaps isn't straightforward. Emmanuel, God is with us in the muck of it. And that is the revelation of Christmas. The diamond is that he is a down here God, cutting through history where word made flesh assured us that all would finally be well. When our lives are real and difficult, my hopes for a deity who understands my needs, who hears my prayers, who makes himself known, comes whispering through. I was traveling to work a few weeks back, and this lady was in front of me. I don't know how God walks towards you, but he has surprised me in the past. At the midnight Eucharist service at St. Paul's Cathedral, people stagger out of pubs only to taste wine minutes later at the communion rail. but I'm reminded that God comes for all people. The purest, the righteous, the wise man of income, the shepherd anxious at the cost of living. Everything we've addressed in this session is kind of echoed in some words by John Betjeman in his poem, Christmas. And is it true? Is it true? The most tremendous tale of all, seen in a stained glass window's hue, a baby in an ox's stall, the maker of the stars and sea become a child on earth for me. No love that in a family dwells, no caroling in frosty air, nor all the steeple-shaking bells can with this single truth compare, that God was man in Palestine and lives today in bread and wine. I wonder how God walks towards you this Advent. I wonder what a young person will say if you do a diamond 9 with them. But above all, I hope that in this session, by walking backwards, you might now approach your children's work in a new way.